Hello and welcome to the inaugural episode of the PSA talk show series on US education. I am Supriya Acharyya, Assistant Manager at PSA, and I am delighted to host the session today, wherein we delve deep into the benefits and opportunities of pursuing higher education in the United States. To provide expert advice on this, we have with us a very special guest of honor, Ms. Sugata Das. She is an experienced counselor with extensive experience of 20 plus years into helping students and guiding students regarding the process of higher education abroad. So let's find out more on that. Let's welcome Sugata and begin the session with our first question to her. Thank you, Sugata, for joining us today.
Thank you, Supriya, and that was a lovely introduction. So
My
I think
pleasure.
you have a list of questions, so let's get started.
Yes. So without much ado, let's start with our first question, which is why should a student consider US for higher studies abroad?
Well, Supriya, there are a lot of reasons why a student should consider US. If we try to list the reasons, there will be quite a few. But I think I would probably like to highlight 3 or 4 reasons. First of all, there are many reputed institutions, so we can talk about the quality of the education being quite superior. And also students have a lot of opportunities to choose from. So when I say this, what I mean to say is that the studies in the US are quite flexible. So as far as a student is concerned, and if he is undecided and he would like to probably explore all his options to the fullest opportunity that he has, he will be able to do so in the US. We can also talk about the research opportunities which the US institutions offer. So they are also known, they are in the world, they are really renowned for their research opportunities. We can also talk about the financial benefits which many of the US institutions offer. So if we actually list out all the reasons, these are quite compelling reasons for a student to consider US as a study destination.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, definitely. We all know that these are the primary factors that a student considers when they look at, pursuing education in an abroad destination beyond their country. So I think, thank you so much for giving the inputs to the students. And the next question that comes to the mind after that is that what are the first steps for, if anybody is planning to start the process, what will be the first steps to initiate the process? If you could, throw some light on that.
Right. I think first will be the research that a student will have to do.
Yes.
I would like to divide this answer into 2 parts. So we can probably look at the aspect when an undergraduate student starts the preparation, and vis-a-vis we have a graduate student starting the preparation. But certain factors remain, common between the both. So first of all, I think the student should start their research by identifying what kind of programs that they wish to study, and with that comes the options of the universities and the institutions. They will have to sit for some exams. As we all know, in the US, the standardized tests sometimes play an important role in the admission process. And also they have to, plan their finances and, everything that is also quite important. So if we look at the first steps for an undergrad student would be to start maybe building his profile for the top US schools.
Absolutely.
So when I say building the profile, then I would also like to stress equal importance on the academics and also on the extracurricular activities.
Okay.
So a student ideally should start their preparation when the student is in their 9th or 10th class by looking or by let's say engaging them in different kind of activities. Also, that point of time, like in year 11, is probably an ideal time to sit for a standardized, test, which is what we know as SAT. And also identifying the schools, getting the recommendation letters on time is a task, and sometimes it can take a bit of a time. So I would say probably these are the first steps that they can do at at the undergrad level. Well, at the grad level also the same thing happens. That means the student may have to sit for a standardized test, which is either a GRE, GMAT, and also not to forget the English proficiency test that a student has to take even at the undergrad level or at the grad level. So even for a grad student, taking those tests, identifying the schools, first of all, they should also find out what course they need to study, looking at the deadlines, because sometimes the US schools also have quite an early deadline, and they actually go by the deadline, very strictly. You have to also look at the fact that you have to again plan your finances. Sometimes your documentation can also take a bit of a time. So I think every step or every process has to go probably hand in hand. But the first thing would be to identify your interest and also try to find out that which schools in the US would ideally fit your right fit.
Okay. So, that brings me to this question, like for an undergraduate student,
Right.
when is the correct time to start? Like when the student is in the class 10th or 11th, or after giving his class 12, when is the right time, you would say, to start the process and take the first steps, as we are discussing that topic?
Right.
So, if you could.
So as we know that there are primarily two intakes in the US.
Yes.
So we basically call it a fall intake, which is an August or a September start.
Right.
And the second intake, which is like the main intake. And the second intake is the spring intake. The spring intake starts at the month of January, early January.
Right.
So if we assume that if a student has decided after receiving the class 12 results that he or she will be keen to pursue, I don't think so that will be a lot of difficulty. They can quite possibly consider the spring intake.
Okay.
And vis-a-vis when I say that student needs to have the standardized test scores, there are many universities and there are very good institutions also which do not require this particular exam as a compulsory requirement.
Okay.
So with their class 12 results and with the English proficiency test and with the recommendation letters, resume, and with any other specific extracurricular activities and any other specific requirements, if they have to meet depending on the course, they can start the application process.
Okay, that's perfect. So that means for a student, even if you are you are not well prepared before and after completion of your class 12, you are then considering going abroad for your higher studies, you can still consider US as one of the study destinations, and you can apply with whatever Sugata has mentioned, the extracurricular activities, whatever you have done, or with the LORs as well as your class 12 percentage and the English proficiency scores. So the examinations like ACT or SAT, these are not the mandatory requirements for getting into US. Okay, so moving on to the next question, that would be like, what are the basic documentations that are required? As you mentioned right now, like the LORs, if we have to list it down, then the mandatory documents without which you cannot apply. So if you could also list down that for our students.
Okay. So Supriya, as we just kind of talked about, the requirements and some of the documents, I'm going to repeat them once again. So you need your academic document depending on the level of your study,
okay,
right? So if you are an undergrad student, so then you would possibly require the academic documents from your class 10th, 11th and 12th. And sometimes it can just be the senior school results too. Again, it will depend on the on the institution. You will also require your letter of recommendation. You have to frame a resume highlighting all the achievements that you have so far. And another important, apart from the English proficiency test, of course, the other important thing is that the student will have to write a statement of intent. Okay. So a statement of intent is a statement of purpose. So where you describe about yourself, about your background, what are you interested in doing, your your, let's say, motivation. So you include a lot of important things in that. At the undergraduate level, what happens is that, and also at the postgraduate level for some courses, you may have to write essays. So those topics are already given in the application form. So that will be a part of the application process. So when we talk about documentation, on one side you have some of the ready-made document. That means your mark sheets and all are there, with you. You don't have to really work very hard. But I think you should ideally give a lot of time in preparing a good statement of intent and also work on the essays. And it's also very, important that you finalize that who will be your recommenders, so that they can be informed well in time. And in today's time now, what happens is that most of the institutions will ask for a reference over an email. So physical reference letters don't seem to work in today's time. So they also need to have the time to get back and to respond back to the university. So all those, communication has to be done as well. So you have your documentation, you have your some documents to prepare, and also getting in touch with your, teachers and professors who would, you would think are the recommenders for your application.
I see. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for that clarification. Now, the most important aspect, which is the what is the kind of a budget that a student may consider when they are looking at studying in the US without a scholarship?
Okay.
Both at undergraduate as well as postgraduate.
Okay. Well, Supriya, it will be difficult to answer this, in one word, but then I would still like to give you an overview and maybe an estimate. The cost, we can divide the cost into two parts: the tuition fees and the living expenses.
Right.
Plus there will be other, let's say, miscellaneous expenses. But just to tell you, the tuition cost,
fees, yes.
The tuition cost. So we can look at a range which can start from $25,000 per annum, and it can go up to $60,000 to $70,000 also per annum.
Oh, okay.
So the difference between the tuition fees of the institutions can vary quite a lot. And students' financial planning is important. So make sure that when you choose the institutions, when you look at the entire profile of the institutions, you also consider the tuition fees and other costs, and that will help in your overall financial planning.
So this 25,000 is both applicable for undergraduate as well as postgraduate courses?
Well, at the graduate level, we have seen some institutions, in fact, charging in fact a little less also. So it can come down to maybe $22,000. But I think that is a little bit of a better average to have of $25,000. It can also be around $28,000.
$28,000.
Yeah.
Okay. So the range more or less remains the same.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the average that we can consider.
Just to give you an overview, but as I said, it also depends on a student, how many credits he enrolls for, how many subjects he decides to do, in like per semester basis. So it actually, looks into a lot of factors, and then only you have a proper tuition fee that you have to pay. But then this actually, this can give you a bit of an idea as to how much it can be.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Sugata, for joining us today for the discussion. I'm sure this is really helpful, this session, and we are going to come up with a few more on the US education overall, wherein we will talk about the other aspects where a student has to consider to look at going to US for higher studies.
Thank you, Supriya.
Thank you. Hope you found our session insightful. So, to get more such informative sessions, please keep an eye on our page as well as subscribe our channel. Hit the bell icon so that you get notifications on time. Also, like us on Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn for updates. And for expert advice on higher education overseas into any destination, do visit our virtual office and take expert advice from counselors free. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.